Hey, it's Dr. Amanda with Straightsmile Solutions, straightsmilesolutions.com. I just basically want to address this question. Do kids outgrow their airway issues? And there's some literature that says they do, and there's some literature that says they don't. And I think whenever we have mixed answers in the literature, and that's normal. Sometimes the literature, we're going at it different ways. Keep in mind, airway is a very complex thing with lots of etiology. So whether or not we're going to outgrow it depends on what caused the airway issue to begin with. So some things you're going to outgrow maybe, and a lot of things you're not. And it really just depends on the foundation. So I really liked learning more about this New Zealand Dunedin study. I had never heard of it before. This was brought up because we were doing an ENT, they were doing an ENT perspective in this podcast, led by Dr. Mike DeLuke. Mike and I were in residency at the same time. I was a year ahead of him. Mike's a legit dude. So there's a lot of people in my past that I'm going to, if you guys ask me one-on-one about them, I'm going to roll my eyes. And I'm not going to say anything directly negative, but I'm going to say, would I trust them? No. Mike, I trust. And especially regarding research. This dude knows his research. We were doing stats class at the same time. He knows his stuff. So anything he says in his podcast, he's not going to say it unless it was backed by research. So anything that's said in this podcast, I 100% will believe as truth. But anyways, I love this interview with Dr. David McIntosh where they started talking about the New Zealand Dunedin Study. I hadn't heard of it, but it's a really different fundamental way to think about how we're doing our orthodontic airway research. And a lot of you guys are just getting frustrated, like, how come, well, if one research says that it's not related, it's not related. No, it really depends on the quality of the research, and there's really good research, and then there's really average research. And you can't always get such a conclusion from really average research. So let's talk about just some of the points. First of all, this study went on for over 50 years, and it was a longitudinal study with really great retention of over 1,000 people in it. It was funded by the government, and it was a very good, high quality study. So the idea is that modern orthodontists are increasingly focusing on how palatal expansion or mandibular advancement might prevent sleep apnea. Okay, so they're saying, would this procedure prevent sleep apnea? Well, at this study, they did 50-year study on airway from the perspective of kids with issues in their inner ear, with hearing issues. But that is also an airway issue. So they called it like glue ear. But they were just saying that they were showing over time, people who had this airway issue as a child, over time had more inflammatory issues later in life. Holy cow, So does the airway issue go away? Maybe in that perspective, but maybe it causes more issues in other ways, in inflammatory down the road, in aging, just an over health of the body. So there are some myths that say, or suggestions that children outgrow sleep disordered breathing, but the Dunedin's cohort tracked the ability for difficult kids, that maybe were showing some markers at age 3, showing that there were other issues that could have happened later, which may or may not have been connected, to this inner ear issue when they were younger. So the Dunedin researchers found that orthodontic outcomes remained stable for 26 years, but didn't necessarily eliminate the systemic causes. So this pushes current airway researchers to look past the straight teeth. So stop treating the teeth. And that's the issue, is that orthodontics define success. Did this bite stay stable? The bite is irrelevant. The bite is not relevant if the patient is suffering, if the patient isn't healthy, if the patient is constantly in a state of inflammation that potentially could have been caused by not addressing things earlier, is what it comes down to. And I keep saying potential because we don't have all the literature. We only have this literature and some very small pieces of literature, but it might take decades in order for us to get the answer. And I'm not even going to be around or even be working in this, as an orthodontist in so many decades when this comes out. But y'all are going to hear this early content that is made, and that's why I'm making it. I'm putting it out there right now because people are going to say, oh, it was never taught in residency. We didn't know. No, we knew. A lot of us knew. And even though the residency programs are not teaching things necessarily properly because the research doesn't exist, because the research takes time to get. So if we all know, and that's what it comes down to, you interview really good orthodontists and ask them, pull them aside, ask them one-on-one. No, don't have them recorded. You're not holding them to anything. They're not being documented, but ask them, do you really believe this, that there might be a connection? There's not a single person out there that says, yeah, if one of my kids had a problem, I would do whatever I needed to do. And that's the truth. So that's why we all know it's a little bit somewhat connected. So, yeah. So, I mean, that's the idea is that this is really just a multidisciplinary situation. And it's not just about teeth and straight teeth and angles malocclusion and class 1 and overjet and overbite. That is so not important. And I really think that orthodontists are doing themselves a disfavor by focusing. And that's part of the reason why I just can't stand this whole ABO board exam. Oh, I'm ABO certified. Who this? So you can overtreat a patient, but underscreen them in terms of airway. Okay, good for you. You're really great at what you do. It's really not that impressive. But yeah, listen to this. This was a great episode. I definitely recommend it. And then you're going to come out of it maybe a little bit more confused than you came coming into it, but you're also going to know in the pit, in the gut of your, you're not going to walk into an AO or any other orthodontic meeting the same way again. You're going to look at it from a very different perspective after listening to this. All right, thanks.